Joining me tonight is the Indian High Commissioner to Canada, Sanjay Verma. In the course of the next few minutes, we will speak to the High Commissioner about a number of subjects, from the Prime Minister's meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the G7 summit to the current ties between the two countries in the larger scheme of things. Thank you, High Commissioner Sanjay Verma, for joining me on the telecast. And of course, my first question about the meeting that has taken place between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Canadian counterpart on the sidelines of the G7 summit. How do you view the future between India and Canada relations here on?
Thank you very much, Meghaji, for having me over. As far as the interaction between our Prime Minister and the Canadian Prime Minister, Mr. Justin Trudeau, is concerned, India is a responsible world power. And it has always been more than forthcoming to enhance its collaboration and cooperation with Canada all the time. But it had to have a basis. And the basis is very clear. The basis is mutual understanding and respect for each other's concerns. Prime Minister Modi, during his interaction with Prime Minister Trudeau, clearly displayed his willingness to take a step forward and interacted briefly on the sidelines of the G7. As far as our concerns are concerned, we have our core concern, long-standing core concern with Canada, which happens to be Canadian citizens casting an evil eye on India's territorial integrity, which is non-negotiable. Unfortunately, we have not seen our concern addressed through the Canadian leadership, and that is there for everyone to see. This core concern is in violation with any international law, as well as any law of morality by which all members of the United Nations, including Canada, has to abide by.
Right. You talked about how the Prime Minister has conveyed himself about the desire and the need for India and Canada to have mutual respect as countries, as governments. This was also a response of the Prime Minister when, in a congratulatory note, the Canadian counterpart Justin Trudeau spoke about law of the land, rule of the law, and maintaining human rights relations. Now, it has been interpreted in a number of ways. The message that was tried to be brought out by the Canadian Prime Minister to the Indian Prime Minister. How do you view this after this message that has been given by Canada to India? How do you interpret it as, and how does India move along with the subject of Khalistan that is a burning topic for Indians who are at this point of time, their lives at peril in Canada?
Because if you look closely, although Canada speaks almost in every conversation about rule of law, India is a rule of law country for decades altogether. We abide by our domestic laws, of course, but also all our international commitments. So on the rule of law framework, we have a complete convergence with any other country which follows rule of law. But the rule of law should not be one for oneself and something else for others. When I talk of Khalistan, it's clearly a violation of the rule of law. How can a country allow its citizens to promote secessionism of other countries, which is friendly to it? Which international law allows citizens of one country to seek division of another country, to seek violation of the territorial integrity of another friendly country? So therefore, I'm very much for the rule of law, but the rule of law has to be applicable as it is defined under various arrangements, conventions, traditions, and of course, agreements.
Right.
So therefore, as far as the Khalistani extremism is concerned, based out of Canada, we are extremely concerned, and this concern has been relayed to our Canadian counterparts and interlocutors several times in the past.
India has also raised a very strong objection Now, this incident has taken place just a few days ago. There was a float glorifying the assassination of the former Prime Minister of the country, Indira Gandhi. This happened in Brampton. Now, how closely are India and Canada, the governments, working together to put an end to such acts of violence that are quite frequent in Canada?
We raised our concern about this aberrant act, which glorified violence, which glorified hate. And we saw our Canadian counterparts on the same platform. What we would like to see now is some exemplary action taken against those perpetrators. There is no place in the world for such uncivilized action. There is no place in the world for such aberrant act of immorality.
There are also, frequent cases of a number of Hindus and Sikhs who are living in different parts of Canada. They've been harassed, they've been abused by pro-Khalistani elements. Under the garb of being activists, they are actually, verbally abusing them, putting them aside and then, gherawing them. There have been a number of videos that have come out, they've gone viral, and there's a lot of concern. Again, has this protest been raised by India? And what is the Canadian government, the Canadian police doing in this regard?
So first thing, these Khalistanis, they call themselves as representative of Sikhs. If that were so, they don't understand anything about Sikhism. So therefore, these Khalistanis are not representing Sikh. They are representing their own selves. They are representing the business that they conduct in the name of Khalistan. Yes, we are aware of various threats, hate speeches against other communities in the society, including the Hindu community in Canada. And that is something, once again, which is unacceptable in any set of law. The hate speech is condemnable. The hate speech should be met with consequences, both from the society and the system. Unfortunately, we have not been able to see that. What happens through those hate speech is that the society gets further divided. Those who are being targeted get intimidated. Is that good for a society? That is what our Canadian interlocutors have to think, realize, and act upon.
Now, in the wake of these death threat posters and hoardings that targeted the Indian High Commissioner, that targeted External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, that targeted Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Canada, this had happened a few months ago after that entire Nijjar incident came to a boil. How safe do you feel attending events across Canada, roaming around freely across Canada?
Freely, I won't say. There are restrictions which I have put on myself and my colleagues on themselves, on their activities, their movement in Canada. But I must commend the federal government in Canada, as well as the provincial governments wherever we go, that they have put good security cordon around us. But then I urge them, I have urged them earlier as well, that let's weed out the main, the core issue due to which the security concerns arise, which is the issue of illegal Khalistan extremism out of Canada.
Do you think the government of Canada and the Canadian police have in fact taken strong action to cull this kind of hate speeches, this kind of acts of violence that not just target local people, that not just target Indian origin Canadians, but also when our Prime Minister gets targeted, when our External Affairs Minister gets targeted, you get targeted. How safe would it be a country to live for Indians who are not, bowing down to the Khalistani narrative that is built over there?
To start with, let me tell you that Canadians are wonderful people. They are peace-loving. But then there are a handful of those Canadians who take advantage of what has been guaranteed to them in the Charter of Rights. Now, this is, I think, that they have gone much beyond what has been given to them. They have misused the freedom of expression. They have misrepresented the facts, and they have created enormity between two communities in Canada. By the way, all of them are Canadians. So it is very much for the Canadian authorities and within their sovereign rights to take care of any such insinuation in their own societies.
Now, talking about the visa services, have full visa services to Canadian nationals resumed? And we know that there were certain of these services that had been resumed after the suspension that happened last year. Now, how long will it take for the full visa services to be resumed? And what are the conditions for resuming them?
If you look practically, then almost all important visa services have been resumed, so there is no bottleneck in that. We also provide for e-visa services to Canada, which is not reciprocal. It is unilateral offer by India. Most of the Canadians do utilize India's e-visa platform. Those who cannot, they of course come to our centers, visa centers and consular centers to take advantage of such services. So there has not been much concern on the visa as far as we are concerned. There are a few visas which still remain suspended, and that is due to operational reasons. But even in those cases, if there are compelling enough a reason for the visa application to be considered, we do make an exception.
Okay. And how about the government of India facilitating student visas? The Indians who want to travel to Canada to study, or they already are studying, they are in their term as for 2 years or 3 years, whatever is the term in which they have to complete their education.
See, the Canadian visa is completely a sovereign issue for Canada, and it may decide to work in any manner it does. And I have no comments to offer on that. But let's realize that there are 4,27,000 Indian international students currently studying in Canada. This is the largest international student community in Canada. They are here, and thankfully most of them are in the designated learning institutes, which means that once you graduate from there, you automatically get an opportunity to find work in Canada and work in Canada for the future pathways. But few of them have got trapped into some unethical practices by unethical and doubtful educational outlets. I'm not calling them colleges or universities. They are basically business outlets for education.
Okay. Has there been any negative impact on India-Canada bilateral trade since this entire Hardeep Nijjar Rao erupted?
One is that at the political level, our conversations could have been more robust as what it is today. On the functional cooperation, so trade, bilateral trade is going on well under the situations. People-to-people contacts are doing well. Innovation ecosystem, science and technology, they are also progressing well. But then there is a fear in everyone's mind regarding disconnect between our two countries due to an allegation which is yet to be substantiated, due to an allegation where we have not seen any evidence coming forward.
Now, in the last 24 hours, there are reports pouring in that the United States of America has extradited Nikhil Gupta, the one who was accused of attempted assassination of a designated terrorist, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. What is India's position on it?
My mandate is only India-Canada relations. I will not like to comment on what's happening between India and the US.
Now, in wake of all that has happened between Canada and India, and there's no blood lost over there, no love lost over there, in a situation such as this, how hopeful are you of the Canadian government of cooperating with India in exterminating Khalistani terrorism that erupts out of Canada, the safe havens that Canada provides right now to these terrorists to be completely wiped out?
You know, it has been there for about 4 decades, so it will be novice on my part to expect it getting addressed just overnight. But we'll keep making the Canadian political leadership aware of our concerns. We'll seek their cooperation. We'll seek out their understanding to to our concern, and we hope that they will be able to take actions which will help our bilateral relations to grow further, deepen further, and widen further.
Thank you so much, High Commissioner Sanjay Verma, for joining me on the telecast, sharing your views on the subject.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.